Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm rolling with the punches, thank you. It's my first capital budget meeting, so I might just be quiet and take it all in. Or drop a few nuggets along the way.
I'm going to bet it. I'm going to take the over on that, Eileen. All right, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. We need one more. Frank, are you still promoting people or do we have everyone here?
I am promoting Christine.
Okay.
And let's see. I have just someone named Fire Tablet, and I'm going to take a risk and do it. And if I need to, hopefully we don't.
Notorious Fire Tablet.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Christine.
Fire Tablet declined, so I don't think that they are a.
They don't want to join us.
All right, so it looks like we have a quorum, and if there's no other committee members to promote, Frank, I'm going to go ahead and get started and call the September 26th, 2024 meeting of the Capital Budget Committee meeting to order. We'll welcome Select Board Member Eileen Murphy, our newest member, appointed as the Select Board representative on the Capital Budget Committee. I'm sure it was a fierce contest to get this plum assignment.
Your decline was very, very widely used.
Congratulations on that. But all right, so with the preliminaries, on March 29th, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law a supplemental budget bill, which, among other things, further extends temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law to March 31st, 2025. Any or all members of a public body may continue participating in meetings remotely. The open meeting law's requirement that a quorum of the body and the chair be physically present at the meeting location remains suspended. This meeting is being recorded. All votes must be taken with a roll call vote. We will begin the open session by having each remote member introduce themselves, starting with Eileen.
Good morning, Eileen Murphy, Chair of the Select Board.
Rob.
Present.
Are you participating remotely or are you here in person?
Remotely. Excuse me.
Christine.
Christine Trewiler participating remotely.
Andrew.
Andrew Foster participating remotely.
Brent.
Brent Nelson participating remotely.
And Mike Marcucci also participating remotely. So welcome, everyone. We have only 2 agenda items for today's meeting. And we will start with the update on the 5-year capital improvement plan.
So just a couple quick small things. I think next week or the week after. No, I'm sorry, it's the 10th. It is October 10th. We'll be hearing from the facilities department by way of the school department. They have requested a tractor for next year. The initial estimate was for $65,000. That has since been lowered to $55,000. So small savings there.
This is for next year's budget, not this year's budget. This year's budget.
Sorry, correct, for fiscal 26.
Okay. No, but for the one we're looking at now, for the budget we're working on now, we're doing fiscal 26 now, right?
Right. Yes.
So it's this year's budget we're working on. It's not an addition in the, okay. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry. Awkward time of year. Is it this year, last year, or the next year? And then Chief Carrico has actually removed a couple of items that he initially had to add as new items for fiscal year 26, a power load system and a stretcher for the ambulance. Those both to be funded out, or would have been funded, requested anyway, to be funded out of the ALS revolving fund. After speaking with a sales rep at Stryker, who's the vendor that serves or provides the equipment for the ambulance, he thinks that there is actually a fix that we don't need to spend the full amount of money on a replacement for, but I will let the chief discuss that next week at his meeting because he can speak far more intelligently about that.
Okay.
And any other things. So that's all I had.
Okay, great. All right, I think, is Katie here? Oh, Katie is here. And our departmental discussion is, oh, and Mel as well. Katie and Mel, welcome to Katie and Mel. Good to see you both. So we're going to discuss the Parks and Rec capital budget items for this year. Do you have any new ones for the future, or are we all just talking fiscal 26 today?
Just fiscal 26, and we'll kind of get into why for the next 4 years we don't have anything.
Okay, is that because of your strategic plan? The strategic planning exercise will lead into capital budget requests?
Yes.
Okay, or the plan may not include any capital budget requests. That's always a possibility, right? If it's particularly strategic. All right, well, let's go through what we have for this year.
Yeah. So, do you want us to start?
I would like you to start, yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for having us. So we'll kind of go over what, in our opinion, are the easier ones because they're coming out of just solely our revolving account. The first one is a small SUV for our department. We have 4 vehicles in total. However, we don't have a small SUV. We have a lot of running around, particularly in the non-summer months. We have a lot of things going on that we need a follow vehicle. We have 15 passenger vans. One we try not to take as far out just because it's an older model with some miles on it. But the small SUV would be we're expanding with special events to be able to load up a small SUV with speakers, materials for events. A perfect example, we recently just had Hinckley grand opening. It's kind of crazy to pack a 15 passenger van when we need just 2 speakers. Then we're taking rows out of the vans to fit the speakers in because it's a 15 passenger van. It's also needed we're noticing right now is our staff at times is using their personal vehicles to do things because we don't have our vans in fleet in the summertime. Our 2 trucks are solely for the grounds department. So those are 90% of the time out with the grounds department. It's not actually here at the FAF Center. So just having the ability not to use our personal cars to run work errands, I think for me as a director, but also with the commission, from a safety point and a liability, we would rather have a town vehicle rather than our personal vehicles.
Just to clarify that though, we do reimburse people for using their personal vehicles.
Well, that was going to be my question. Okay. And you have, just to clarify something you just said, Katie, so you have 4 vehicles in total. 2 are trucks that are used for
Grounds department.
But in theory, you could use that if you needed to put 2 speakers in the back and bring something over to a facility, just drop the bed and slide it in, and even easier than having to deal with a 15-person van.
Yes and no. We try, so the trucks are getting a lot of miles on it. The other problem is the comfort level of driving these trucks. I don't really necessarily feel comfortable driving an F-350. They're wider than normal vehicles. So I think that's also coming into play. It's not what we need for like the simple tasks.
And then the other 2 vehicles are strictly 2 15-person vans?
Yeah, so they're 15 passenger vans. One doesn't have the capability of rows being taken out. It's an older model. And then our other van, it's set up for 15 passengers, and it takes about 45 minutes to an hour just to get the back row out. In which also when you're one person, they're heavy to get out. So it's not an ideal situation. For example, when we just tried to get a row out, then it wouldn't go back in. And so then we had to figure out and bring it over to the shop to figure out how to put the 4th row technically back in after the event.
So I would assume down the road, one of those 15-person vans is going to have to be replaced. So would we look at doing that potentially sooner and then making more use out of a van that's more flexible and convenient for?
No, so we right now, we only use, we have an older model van, and then we have a new van that was, I want to say, purchased in 2020. Right now, we're not in a need of a new van. We don't foresee it being we have the new van. That's really what we need. In the summertime, the vans are used more often, but we don't technically need like 2/3 vans, but right now the older model doesn't have a lot of miles on it. It's just older, so it as it's going on, it's not running like a new car anymore.
So I think just back to the vehicle. So last week, might have been the week before, the select board have now adopted a vehicle first policy. So I think we're going to have to go back and get a new quote on this, because you're going to have to look at a hybrid vehicle for an SUV.
But going back to Eileen's question though, Katie, I mean, let's say you got a new van, right, with the idea that you need the third vehicle. The new van will be the third vehicle, then that will eventually replace the other van that you need, right? I mean, I will say that I'm not finding the case for this small SUV particularly compelling, right? I mean, I guess if the issue is that it's hard, and believe me, I have wrangled the seats in and out of multi-passenger vans for much of the last 15 years. So I know it can be a challenge. I can show if anyone needs a little training on that, I'm happy to provide it. But it seems like if what you need is a third vehicle, you're better off having a third vehicle that's got more long-term utility than one that's just going to kind of be kind of a fill-in. And it sounds like, frankly, people using their personal vehicles in these circumstances and getting reimbursed for it might be the best way to kind of fill that gap anyway, right?
Yeah. I don't think for our staff, like for comfort level, like we do reimburse, but then the problem is what if the personal vehicle gets in an accident? And so
they're covered by our insurance. They're covered by our insurance and their insurance if they're doing it within the line of work.
Yeah, I think for us though, it is like we do more of the small day-to-day tasks where the vans aren't for us. It's not logical to use them, but also like when we're trying to keep the vans are more expensive than a small SUV, we're trying to keep the miles off of them. And so like, for example, is like when we go to our soccer program, we're taking the vans to our soccer program, and it's not ideal because then we're taking the third row out and only one person is working Saturday. They can't take the third row out by themselves. So I think it's just when you look at the grand scheme of things, it doesn't seem, but like our small day-to-day tasks, like even running across town to Metacomic or McCarthy or Baxter, it's driving a 15-passenger van. Some of our staff does not feel comfortable driving the vans. They are large. I personally feel comfortable, but at the same time, it has been brought to our attention by several of our staff members, part-time included, who do drive these vans. They don't feel comfortable driving them. So, and that's the same thing with the F-250 and the F-350. They're just larger vehicles. So like our F-350 right now is equipped with all of our leaf blowing, which is a huge back. And so we can't use that right now because it's in season. But when we're not in like fall season, then it has the big cargo on the back. So it's wider frame, and the F-350 is already a wider truck. I think it also comes down to the comfort level of our staff. And then I'm not sure, and I can talk to Christine, but like when I don't know which is when a staff member doesn't feel comfortable driving their personal van or personal cars for work errands, I would like to give them an option. And personally, like I look at other departments, Park and Rec specific, and it's more of smaller SUVs to do all of these like one-off events and programming.
Several years ago, we had a summer counselor drive one of our pickup trucks right into the pole, the telephone pole behind the path. And according to him, he was uncomfortable driving. We wish he had expressed that initially, but an SUV for us would be the most convenient, especially where we'll be bringing on an assistant director. We'll be looking to expand our programming and also create new programming. So.
All right. Any other questions from other members of the committee? All right. What next one?
Well, Before you move
Oh,
on,
Brent, go ahead. Yeah.
would we be in a position to take any action if we need to get a new quote? I mean, I guess I'm saying that it's quoted here at 40,000, but I have to assume a hybrid vehicle is more expensive.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
go back and get a new quote on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be taking a vote on this
Right.
today, Brent. We're gonna do a quote and we'll have to talk about the merits of the request and all that as well. So I don't think we're ready to vote on this one, but. All right, what's next, Katie?
So next is our strategic planning. So we have been discussing this since I have been hired to come up with a strategic plan. We're looking at having an assistant director coming on board in January, utilizing a strategic plan to go hand in hand with our open space and recreation plan is looking, and I believe you guys from Frank's packet have what Barry and Dunn came up with, is looking at opportunities for us to expand and where should we be expanding to. We've talked to a couple of consultants just because we want to get different feedback, and really utilizing for the commission standpoint, but also as a director's standpoint of what the forecast could be. Like, we're getting pressed to do pickleball courts. And so is that the best idea for us, even though all the surrounding towns have pickleball courts? So we're really looking for a strategic plan to come in and kind of give us the roadmap of, hey, yes, pickleball is popular, but you guys could benefit by doing X, Y, and Z. It's also for us is if we got a community center, what that could look like, the generating of the revenue, as well as, I think for personally speaking as a director, giving us more of an idea in working and complementing the open space and recreation plan. I know that's been brought up at several of our commission meetings now that the open space and recreation plan, how are we implementing some of the changes that are requested? So we believe that we can do some of it on our own, but also coming up with a strategic plan of, hey, this is where this group has come in, where we could utilize as Medfield Parks and Recreation, what we could do to better not only our department, but the services for our residents.
What's the amount of the request?
40,000
40,000.
out of the revolving account.
And this would be completed 6 months, like next year, essentially.
Katie, can you just repeat that? We have it listed as you are paying for it. You're requesting the money out of the capital stabilization fund.
No, so the only thing that we're requesting for capital stabilization fund is the tennis courts.
So this would be Parks and Rec revolving. Okay,
Yes.
we'll make a change to that.
All right, committee members, any questions on the strategic plan?
No, my question was gonna be the funding, so if that's been flipped back to Parks and Rec revolving, that makes more sense. And then is the intent, I think you just said this, Katie, because we talked about this when I went to one of your meetings maybe about 2 months ago. The plan is to start looking at a new home for Parks and Recreation, and this plan will help you with what you would need to help drive the programs that this program would potentially suggest you have?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, anyone else on the strategic plan? All right, next item.
Our final item is the Metacomic tennis courts. So I've been working for the last year and a half in regards to our tennis courts. They are not in great shape. We've had probably over 24 complaints in regards to this within the last 2.5 months. I think when we replace the lights, obviously that's going to bring a lot of attention to the tennis courts, but overall they're in horrible shape. It is becoming a safety concern. We have people tripping over part of it because when they resurfaced it, so we're not looking to resurface. We've been resurfacing for the last 7 to 9 years. I leaned to Mel on that question. We're past that point, so we really need to reconstruct the tennis courts. A couple of reasons, obviously safety. It's our only tennis courts for us that we have. It's the home to high school athletics for their varsity sports. We host different leagues, but we're noticing some of the leagues have been nicely telling us they're going to go elsewhere just because of the conditions of our courts. But also residents now are excited that we have lighting on the courts, but the courts are not in good shape at all. I think we're struggling with when it comes to funding this project, Park and Recreation has usually always self-funded. Obviously, looking at a $500,000 project, we cannot sustain that on our own. And so we will be looking for money for capital stabilization. I did reach out to UTSA, which is the National Tennis Association, because they do grants for this. I have not heard back. Lexington just did the remodel of their courts and received some grants. However, it is hard to get those grants because you need to have certain qualifications. I'm not sure if Medfield will qualify, but I'm still in that process. I think in general, it's when we're looking at longevity, and this is kind of going hand in hand with our capital projects, there are several things that residents want us to do, right? New pickleball courts, but we currently can't keep up with our current properties. So if we're not able to get help with this project, the courts are going to continue to deteriorate, and resurfacing at this point, we've talked to 2 of the companies that have done work on our courts before, and then they said, you're at a point of reconstruction and not to resurface.
I have a question. What is the life of a reconstructed court? The range.
What was the question?
The range of a new court.
What is the life expectancy of the courts?
Yeah, useful life.
So it depends. So because we're in New England, it depends on the weathering. So if we have rough winters, it's a shorter expansion, but we've been quoted anywhere between 10 to 15 years of keeping up with it. I think at one point it seems as if when I've talked to the companies that have come out just to look at the resurfacing, when we have on court 3, part of it's peeling back. We took too long to get the resurfacing. So I'm still waiting to see what it is, but I've been also talking to Ben from facilities, because he just helped with the RFP for the tennis courts, about how long in New England. It's different for New England courts just because of the weather, but anywhere between, it could be 10 to 15, it could be 15 to 20. It depends on when they come out and do the analysis of our area.
Okay.
For funding purposes, we'll be looking to sit down with the school department where they're using from April to June, they're using our courts basically the entire afternoon for boys and girls tennis. And it's basically almost a quarter of our entire tennis season. So, we thought it was, excuse me, we thought it was kind of unusual when they looked to replace the 2 tennis courts at their property, and yet their athletic teams have to play on ours, and they're just not. I think if you've seen some of the other Tri-Valley courts, there's nothing close. So.
Any other questions on the tennis court reconstruction? All right, what's next?
That's it.
That's it. Oh, wow. We're at the end. All
That
right.
was easy.
Can I ask a quick question?
You can ask a quick question, long question of any length.
So pickleball courts, and I saw this at maybe the meeting we just had, Katie, up at Martin McCarthy Park. knowing the sensitivity of people hearing, when they hear the idea of a pickleball court, the noise issue. So I would love to see if there's a way, because if we were to do anything on the back side of that, we're not abutting any neighbors that far over on the right-hand side of the property, plenty of parking, and that would allow you to do potentially 4 courts, and you're not gonna have the noise. The only people who are gonna hear it are gonna be the birds along the wetlands along 27. And candidly, they'd probably be more distracted by the gunfire that's going over at the range, so.
So we,
Compared to that.
yeah, this actually got brought up at the commission meeting last night. And what I am concerned about is we currently, if you look at our properties, we're not able to sustain, if we don't receive funding with capital stabilization fund, we don't have the money to, one, keep up with our current courts, because on the backside of when Hinckley got done, now everybody, not everybody, there has been several families with concerns about Metacomic Playground. And so what I'm concerned about is if we keep adding, but we can't currently sustain what we have, I'm nervous of the upkeep for our future. So right now, we thankfully have McCarthy driveway and Hinckley playground paving getting done hopefully this spring. That was last year's town meeting. I would love to add pickleball. I think that overall that will help when we do the strategic plan, is to see like, well, how much would that cost to create a sole structure out there? Then if we're thinking about potentially putting disc golf out there somewhere, McCarthy is becoming very popular, and it's already popular. So we're just trying to utilize what the strategic plan comes up with, look at the passive recreation, to see what the open space and recreation. I would love to put pickleball up there. My concerns, as well as the commission, is we're trying to get a $500,000 project, and that's just resurfacing or reconstruction of what we currently have. What would a price tag be for a new pickleball court? So that was something that we're mindful of. Just to make note, the commission talked last night, we do not want to put pickleball at Metacomet. There's too much already going on there with very little parking, but it's also residential for the sound. And that's something to be mindful of, is when you look at a pickleball court, there are sounding boards, but they're upwards to 2 or 3 courts to get the full sounding boards. It's around $65,000 to $85,000 to add the sound. So you really want to look for a non-residential area, because it adds a lot more to the price tag.
No, and the only thing I'm going to say as a resident is I just hope, look at certain programs, you look at what programs are going to benefit residents that are already in town funding some of these with their tax dollars versus programs that may draw from the outside. That's all well and good, but let's make sure we're listening to the majority of our residents and what needs pertain to them.
Yeah. And right now, we've had more people call about tennis. So I think it's because the lights got done, which they're excited about. And the courts are actually a lot busier at night because of the lights. And the neighbors, we just had 3 neighbors say like the lighting in their overflow is so much better compared to the old light system, like that would shine in. So that's a positive. But now we're getting excitement, obviously with Hinckley Playground just being done. We did talk to MFI. We've talked to some tennis players that would be interested in helping fundraise. I just told Mel, and my concerns is playgrounds get a lot more fundraising because there's a lot more passion and a lot more people will back up comparatively to a tennis court. We have a lot of excited tennis court players, but to fundraise for that, it makes it harder. So that's something the Park and Recreation, we're not opposed to. We would obviously just need people to step up to create a fundraising group to partner with MFI. However, what we're nervous about is when we just saw the school's tennis courts and then the basketball courts go out to bid, it's getting pretty expensive. So if we don't, it's going to start costing us more money to do the project if we keep waiting longer.
I just have one question, and that is whether the thinking more long term, whether the idea of, say, pickleball courts or maybe the disc golf, if that is expected to be addressed in the strategic plan, and when would if the town goes ahead with contracting with the consultant, when would they expect that plan to be presented to the town? Because this seems to me as if this might even be part of a longer term plan, strategic plan, that is.
Yeah, so if the strategic plan is passed for this town meeting, we have to go out for an RFP, and then they said it takes about 3 to 6 months. Because we already have the open space and recreation plan done, that's very helpful to them, because usually they would have to come in and do that research as well. So we're able just to give them our open space and recreation plan. So we're probably, I would say, a year from now, we would have it by, hopefully, if all goes well, by next December of a strategic plan.
December of 26.
December of
No.
25.
25.
Oh, 25.
Yeah. So
Oh, okay,
they,
that would, yeah, okay. That
yeah,
would be
because
great.
we
Actually,
have,
that
like I
would be
said,
faster than I thought.
yeah, because we have the open space and recreation plan already done and completed. That helps with their timeline, speed up the process, because we have all that information gathered already.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any other questions or comments, or can we let Katie and Mel go? All right. Thank you very much, Katie and Mel. Good to see you as always.
Thank
Thank
you as
you.
well. Bye-bye.
So I think a couple of things here. My sense is we're going to have to get the new quote on this requested vehicle, and then we'll have to discuss, I think, our views and the merits of whether they really need this additional vehicle. And just philosophically, I think the committee has been more deferential to departments with revolving funds in the use of their capital as being funded by revolving funds. I'll say from my own perspective, while there should be some deference there, it can't be complete, because if the money is spent on the revolving fund on one thing, on the back end, there could still be a claim against sort of regular town funds or stabilization funds as well. And so maybe a tie goes to the runner on those kinds of requests, but we still need to talk through whether this really meets the merits of that. And we'll have to hear what the number is on the hybrid and go from there. And then similarly with the request on the tennis courts and the capital stabilization fund, I think we'll have to discuss that in the context of all of the requests to hit the capital stabilization fund this year and going forward. And so I think we've heard from the department on what they're looking for and why, and I think we all have a sense of that. And then we'll just have to balance it against the other requests for this year and the other demands in that fund going forward. And so I think I'm not prepared to call for a vote on any of this today with respect to these requests, because I think we'll have to get the additional information and then deliberate about the use of the capital stabilization fund for the tennis courts once we have everything in and we're ready to discuss it all together. Does that make sense to everyone?
Makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else we need to cover? Any other business before we adjourn?
Just a quick question on scheduling. So our next meeting is October 3rd. I believe public safety chiefs coming in for that meeting. And then the following meeting is October 10th. When right now we just have facilities scheduled to come in. I believe at that point, I don't believe we'll be doing any other departments at that time. So I didn't know if you wanted to tentatively schedule a vote on a recommendation to the select board at the October 10th meeting, or if you wanted to schedule a meeting beyond October 10th to do that.
So I am fine with scheduling a vote on the 10th. I just won't be at that meeting. So I have a business commitment at that time on the 10th. And so I'm happy to have everybody vote without me and figure that out. Otherwise, I could do the 17th.
I can't do the 10th either.
Okay.
I think we're going to need another vote anyway, because I think, Brent, you requested some information from the school department regarding their IT. So we're going to need to review that as well. So I think pushing it out for another week would make sense.
All right. So Frank, why don't you poll everybody offline about their availability for the 17th? And we can, if that works for, a quorum plus of the board, we can kind of think of the 17th as our last meeting to finalize and recommend a recommend a budget for this year to the select board, and then tentatively sort of weigh in on the new sort of updated 5-year plan at that point. I don't think we have to finally vote to agree to the 5-year plan, but we can at least say that as currently constituted, it looks good, bad, and different. If there's any items, particularly if there's items in the future that people really have concerns about that are in that 5-year plan, I think we would then schedule a future meeting of this committee to talk at those requests in particular. It wouldn't have to be in the time frame for this year's recommendation to the select board, but if people have reservations about items in the future on that 5-year plan, I think we would I want to say owe it to the departments, but it'd be better for departmental planning if we indicated at least up front that we might not want to include some of those items on the 5-year plan. So does that sound good to everybody as an agenda for the 17th or whenever we can schedule this meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
And I apologize for the difficulty of my Thursday availabilities. But it is what it is. So, all right. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mike, you have a question in the chat.
Oh, okay. I don't see it.
Sorry. It's actually, it's Fire Tablet, but Chris has said that it's her, Chris McHugh. She's asking if the 5-year plan will also be sent to the school committee for their review.
I don't remember what's on the, I don't know that in the policy, does it go to them?
It should go to the school committee for their review as well.
Okay. The 5-year plan or this year's budget or both?
Both.
Both. Okay. Yeah, whatever the policy says, we'll do.
Okay.
No. All right. Anything else?
Just to confirm, we have a meeting on the 3rd. Do we have a meeting on the 10th, or is the next meeting the 17th?
It will be the 17th if that works for enough people. Sounds like. Or do we have a meeting on the 10th as well, Frank? Is that the facilities on the 10th?
Well, that's actually, it's a fair question. We do have it scheduled for the 10th, but we could push it if it turns out that most people can't make it. Or might.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to have a separate meeting just for facilities. So if the 17th works for everybody, let's just move facilities to the 17th and do the good point, Eileen. Yeah, thank you. All right. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Or a second.
Second.
All right. Eileen,
Aye.
Andrew,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.